Welcome to the Circular Exchange with Circular Materials, where leaders come together to shape the future of the circular economy. My name is Alan Langdon, CEO of Circular Materials and your podcast host. In each episode, we're bringing you conversations with the people driving progress and innovation in recycling and extended producer responsibility across Canada. Together, we're exploring what it takes to build a system that supports people and the planet. Today, we're exploring the power of partnership between producer responsibility organizations, or what is often known as PROs, that handle different kinds of materials and products. With many different kinds of EPR programs, collaboration helps to make each program more successful. My guests today are Alain Renard, Director of Stewardship Programs of the Health Products Stewardship Association, or HPSA, and Jon McQuaid, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Call to Recycle. Welcome to the conversation, and thanks to each of you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Now, maybe just to start, take a minute to introduce yourself and maybe talk about your role and what you do for your respective organizations.
Thanks for having me, Jon McQuaid here, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Call to Recycle. Just a bit about our organization. So we're the country's leading battery collection and recycling organization. We've been around for, it's amazing, almost 3 decades now. And we just recently crossed the 55 million kilograms of batteries collected and recycled recently. And that's our mission, is to bring awareness to consumers around the importance of collecting and recycling batteries. We operate across 8 provinces and 1 territory, with a lot more growth ahead of us. We're launching in the province of New Brunswick very shortly on January 1st, 2026. And my role, again, is just to lead the public education and awareness efforts, just to ensure consumers know why it's important to recycle batteries, how easy it is to do so across our collection partners across the country, and just lead all the public education awareness campaigns just to motivate behavior change and recycling habits.
That's awesome, Alain.
Yes, so I'm Alain Renard, Director of Stewardship Programs East, as you mentioned, Alan, for the Health Products Stewardship Association, HPSA. So the association has been active for 25 years this year. In the program management for consumer medications, unwanted medications return, and used medical sharps returns to collection locations, which are pharmacies. We are operating in 6 provinces as of now, and last year was a great year for us because we implemented 2 new programs in New Brunswick and in Quebec, which was a significant one for us. So as the Director of Stewardship Programs, basically, I'm overseeing the programs in the east of Canada. So currently 3 provinces, New Brunswick, Quebec, and Prince Edward Island, and making sure, as Jon mentioned, that consumers are bringing back their materials, making sure that our collection locations are well equipped to receive those materials, and working with our service provider to make sure those wastes are properly disposed of.
That's great. And just to kind of round out things, maybe just a little bit about yourselves in terms of, what first got you interested in sustainability, recycling, and kind of the work you do today. And maybe, Jon, you can pick up from there.
Yeah, so I've been with the organization for almost 5 years now. And before that, I was in the food service hospitality industry. And I just always had an affiliation with, waste reduction and, sustainability in those prior roles. And, back in 2020, I know during the COVID pandemic time, it was an interesting time to join the organization, but just the opportunity at Call to Recycle in terms of the growth of batteries and battery powered devices in the marketplace just really resonated with me in terms of the impact that can be made on the environment and sustainability leadership. And so that's, in the last 5 years, and I'm sure we'll touch upon it, we've just seen significant growth across our program with our footprint in Canada, as well as the amount of batteries that we've been collecting, just because there's more and more of these batteries placed into the market that need to be recycled responsibly. So that's a little bit of my background there.
And Alain?
I'd say that I always loved nature, even during childhood. I loved mountaineering, so I always been close to nature. Um, I picked chemistry out of education, and I have a teacher of mine saying, life is chemistry, and that really inspired me. And during chemistry, I specialized in organic chemistry, and of course, drugs were some items that I studied. And in the mid 2000s, of course, sustainability was getting higher on the radars. And I decided to go back to university and do a master on the topic. And since then, I really had different roles, but with always the willingness to look at, let's say, the situation with a systemic lens. Making sure that collaborating with different partners, we can implement, sustainable solutions. And EPR is very something that I enjoy because of, this systemic aspect, the need to speak with different stakeholders, to work with different stakeholders, like other PROs, like other, like governments, like brand owners, like consumers. And definitely, looking at this from a full life cycle perspective is really something that attracts me.
Yeah, and I think the idea about stakeholders, I think for EPR, one of the things that we all have to function in is an environment where you're managing a large group of stakeholders, and impacted stakeholders, and making sure that your programs are meeting the various needs of your various stakeholders. But before we get into the collaboration discussion, anything in particular we need to know about the types of materials that each of your programs manage? I think you guys have talked about them, but maybe just to kind of set the scene for the discussion, what types of materials do your specific programs manage?
Yeah, so our core is batteries, right? But when we talk about batteries, there's four categories that we look after. So your household batteries, double A's, your triple A's, your C's, D's, anything under 5 kilograms. That's the core of our program that we look after. Then obviously in recent years, the growth of e-mobility and e-bikes. So we also look after and collect those e-bike batteries in different jurisdictions. And then most recently, the growth of the EV segment, the OEMs are in the auto manufacturing industry actually selected Culture Recycle to administer their program, and it's industry-led program called EV battery recovery. And there's a lot more to happen and develop in that space. And then the fourth segment is, call it, growth segments or embedded batteries. So think of products like e-cigarettes, vape. So, the regulations were amended in Quebec recently, and on January 1st, we launched a Recycle Your Vapes program in the province of Quebec to obviously collect and responsibly recycle those vape devices, of which the battery is the most complex component of it. So those are the four, I guess, battery categories that our program looks after. And I'd say the majority of it is those, household batteries, the double A's, triple A's, C's, and D's of the world.
But still like growing into these new areas of business, which I think has only kind of happened over the last 2 years, right?
Correct. And we're going to see more of it, right? In terms of regulation, the regulatory landscape, and, more of these, battery powered devices like drones and outdoor power equipment and all these, call it growth segments and products that we're seeing. And I think it's so innovative and fast moving that there's a lot to unpack there in terms of regulations as well as, voluntary solutions. So I think a lot of the collaboration and that we're going to talk about a little bit later between PROs as well as the different stakeholder groups, Alan, that you mentioned, is so critical to have a proper solution in place.
Yeah, totally. And basically with almost every new product requires a battery, and it sounds like you guys are going to be there at every step along the way. Alain, I'll give you some time too. What are the products captured under your program?
So we have two main categories of consumer health products. So one is called medications, and include prescription medications, over the counter drugs, sorry, and natural health products. So that's one category, and the other category is sharps, with a lot of different types of sharps, from pen tips, continuous glucose monitoring devices. And I would say the same way as John mentioned, there is a growing number of new products. Of course, with the medical needs of the population and the willingness to have at-home treatment, then there are more and more products that are regulated as well. And in fact, as mentioned, Alan, there are some sharp devices that have some batteries in there, and we're really willing to work with Go to Recycle to find some solutions for those.
Well, I actually didn't know about that. That's super interesting. Now, Lana, just staying with you, we started collaborating with HPSA in 2024 with a focus on common goals and sharing best practices for recycling education and material management, both Ontario and New Brunswick. And so, Lana, in your experience, why is collaboration with pros so important, and what have you seen come from the collaboration?
So we're speaking with the same stakeholders. We're speaking with the same consumers. So obviously, the most efficient and effective message and simple message will empower consumers to act according to our guidance and make sure that they bring back the materials that they need to bring back. So joint communication is definitely first. And for example, a practical experience was in Fredericton last year, where Circular Materials did contact HPSA in order to advertise on the sharps contamination of the blue box. So that's a very practical example, and we're definitely looking forward to continuing this joint communication. And another item where PROs can definitely work together is the cross-contamination. So, for example, a lot of consumers are bringing back for their medications their packaging, which end in the wrong waste stream. And we're definitely willing to make sure that we improve the communication there. And the same thing with regard to the sharps that are wrongly placed in the blue box, for example, or other medications, and make sure that consumers are aware about the right thing to do and know that they can have an impact by doing the right sorting.
Yeah, and I think the sharps in particular, like I think for us, and I think we've talked about it, is really the worker safety. When people are not putting their sharps or taking their sharps back to HPSA and your network of collectors, they're ending up in the blue box and then potentially ending up on our sort lines. And that puts our workers at risk because, who knows where that needle's been. And we've had instances in other jurisdictions where people have been, interact with that needle and it's not a good outcome. And, they end up getting stuck with it. And then, in some cases having to go to hospital. So I think from our perspective, when HPSA came along, I think the idea was, this totally makes sense because we want to support HPSA and make sure that material is going to the right place, but we also want to protect our workers and the workers of our service providers and making sure that we're not putting them at risk and that material is not getting into our facilities.
Definitely, and something that we are looking at as well is our products are highly regulated and of course need to be incinerated for quite a big chunk of them. And if we're going to incinerate packaging, this is really a wrong outcome for those materials. They must be recycled, and definitely working together will make sure that we have the best environmental output because of the right processing of those materials.
Yeah, if we can all capture that material, it's eminently recyclable, and it makes sense for us to be able to capture it and make sure that it goes to the right home and we're responsibly recycling it. John, we just started collaborating with Call to Recycle on public awareness and the recycling of materials specific to each of our organization's mandate, namely ensuring that batteries are recycled safely and don't end up in the blue bin, where they can cause, of course, fires at recycling facilities. So, I have a few things to say, but maybe I'll give you a first chance to talk about the collaboration and why it's important to our collective goals.
I mean, we're thrilled to be collaborating with your team. I think one of the unique challenges of our space and the battery segment is, again, the household batteries, the size of them, right? So for the consumer, wrongly, they may look at the trash or the regular recycling and, all right, that's how I'm going to dispose of it. But it's so important that we collaborate together because we're stronger with our voice together. And I was saying to Alan earlier that we're just, consumers are just overwhelmed with the amount of content that is coming at them left, right, and center with email notifications, Teams notifications, social media. So like the more we can collaborate on the same message, and let's talk safety, for example, the more powerful we will to actually curb what is becoming a growing issue that is affecting people and property and our community and our workers. So again, we're thrilled to be collaborating with Circular Materials. And I think we need to be collaborating with other PROs across all jurisdictions to make sure we're driving environmental outcomes, but also safety.
One, I think already. Yeah, no, yeah.
I was this really resonates with us as well, John, because we have indeed, consumers that are, for example, still throwing their medications in the sinks or in the regular garbage, and that end in the environment. And here, we have some unfortunately nasty chemicals there that pollute the environment. And definitely, it's how to make sure consumers are aware about those risks. And here we have as well best practices in order to make sure that our communication really has an impact and consumers really understand. And it will benefit all our PROs of better managing those materials.
Well, and I think, you know what, John, I just want to pick up on one of the things John said. I think the challenge ahead of us is how do we effectively communicate in a growingly, an increasingly disparate media environment, right? Where the individual consumer has access to such a wide range of content on such a wide range of platforms. Like, how do we focus our message? And we all have requirements under regulation to, implement promotion education programs in the various jurisdictions. And I think we're all struggling with the same thing. How do we spend dollars effectively and make sure that we're reaching the consumers? Because, there's lots of consumers looking for that information, but they're not necessarily the people we want to reach. We want to reach the people who are doing the wrong thing. And that's probably the biggest challenge ahead of us. And to me, why collaboration makes so much sense. Like, if we can combine our efforts, we're in a much better place to kind of break through, which is what we need, and communicate to those people that we're trying to get to say, can you put these sharps in the right place? Can you put these batteries in the right place? Can we avoid these, negative outcomes if batteries get into our sorting facilities, if sharps get into our sorting facilities? So I think, I don't know that we have any choice at this point. Like, if we're not working together, I'm not sure we have enough going on separately to actually make the kind of breakthrough that we want.
Yeah, and I'll say two things, Alan, to your point. Number one is the landscape has changed in terms of the technology and the type of batteries, with lithium ion batteries and laptops, iPods, cell phones, you name it. And the second point I'd say is, collaboration together, we're more powerful with our data, right? So if we have data-driven awareness campaigns, so in higher risk communities where, you may be seeing batteries being inadvertently wrongly placed in the recycling stream, we can work together on a more targeted awareness campaign where the consumer in Northern Ontario consumes content a little bit differently than in downtown GTA, where there's, it's harder to break through. So I think the collaboration also speaks to data-driven decisions that our organizations can work together on.
Yeah, totally. And I think, it's a great point. Like, using data to, drive our efforts in a more strategic way. I know for Circular Materials, we're still in those early days. We're only, 2 or 3 years in operation and still working through kind of the baseline for our communication and education efforts. But I think as we work together and find out, these are areas we want to focus on. I think, especially in small communities, obviously we make a big, we can make a meaningful push. They will continue to struggle in those large communities, but you probably want to add in on this as well.
No, I was smiling because you were saying you were just 2 years of existence and struggling with the communication. We've been since 1999, and we're still struggling with the communication.
Absolutely.
We had recently a survey early 2025 saying that 65% of people nearly for the know what to do. But with regard to the return, the sharps user were much more informed than the medications user, which is just 50%. So we are really, struggling, as you mentioned, because of the variety of the communication channels, because of the overload of information. And, what about AI? What about making sure that if there is a best practice in another PRO to just say, hey, this works, and still adapting to the audience because that changed, and making sure our other stakeholders are leveraged as well. Because I think that's something that we would really benefit from is making sure that our partners, in the wider community, as well are relays of our messages so that everybody really speaks about the importance of bringing back those materials.
Yeah, and don't even get me going on trying to communicate with folks under 35. Like, I think that is its whole challenge unto itself. Literally, we should be doing to TikTok right now. We'd be in a much better place in communicating to those folks, but that's maybe the next evolution. But maybe speaking to that, we've talked about some of the challenges and what we're doing. What are the opportunities you see for greater alignment and efficiency across different EPR programs? So maybe, Elaine, I'll give you a chance to kind of lead off there.
Well, we already spoke about, aligning and streamlining communications, joint communications, I think. Likely as we're speaking with the same stakeholders, like for example in Quebec, we're working together when we speak with the oversight agency, Recy Quebec, and with the ministry, and that really helps because it ensures that we do not look only at our specific program, but we help as well the whole community of PROs and as well of other stakeholders to make sure that the outcome is the best from a material management and of course an environmental perspective. So it's yes, communication is clear and managing the contamination, as I mentioned, working with other PROs to make sure that no hazardous material is left behind and not properly processed.
Jon?
Yeah, of course, the public education and awareness is first and foremost, but I think that a couple others would be innovation. I think, leveraging technology and tools, for, consolidated pickups, tracking, logistics. And, one thing that we rolled out at the end of 2024 was a battery smart collection container. So it uses telemetrics to tell when the battery bins are almost full for direct pickup to our collection sites, as well as, if there is an increase in temperature inside, it would alert the location as well as ourselves. So I think there's something there with innovation and technology. And then I think, policy best practices, I touched upon the growth in battery devices that is outpacing what we're seeing. And, so I think the fact that, some PROs are across Canada and has best practices in different jurisdictions can help, inform the realities of some emerging sectors. And, as an example, in the EV space, it's a very different battery and a very different life cycle than your typical AA alkaline. Even the e-cigarettes, right? The program that we launched in Quebec earlier this year, that's more and more becoming an environmental and safety issue across other provinces and across the globe. So there's some best practices, sharing of information that we can do across the board.
Alan, if I may, before you continue.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely looking at international best practices, as you mentioned, Jon. We know, for example, that in Europe, there are some of our members that are recycling, which is not the case currently in Canada. So we are looking as well as other international best practices. And I was speaking about member, definitely working together with the other PROs is helping to make sure members understand which programs are for which products, like, circular materials for packaging versus, for example, HPSA for healthcare products, because sometimes they are mixing things up and making sure that, we can cross-reference, for example, members to make sure they understand the specifics and are better equipped and jointly communicating, having webinars together, definitely support this intention.
Okay, so I'm going to just leave with one rapid fire question. I'm going to maybe kick off it. I want to say, looking ahead, what's your vision or hope for the future of EPR and pro partnerships in Canada over the next 5-10 years? I think from our perspective, especially on the promotion education, how can we work together in this fragmented media environment to communicate, a consistent message across all our different organizations and different platforms? That to me is one of the, kind of base requirements in these partnerships. And I think there's other operational things we're going to kind of move forward with as we get into, deeper and deeper collaboration. But that for me over the next 5-10 years is a big focus. But interested, in 30 seconds, where do you see the opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe starting with Jon.
Listen, I'm the VP of Marketing Communications, so however it's
Switch, yeah.
I'm speaking my language, right? So I know, like with the youth audience, right? For example, you have to speak to them in a different way. So we partner with youth organizations to do school contests with battery collections, in terms of, new markets that, the recycling rates aren't as mature as others. You have to tailor the message differently. So I think you're bang on, Alan, around public education and awareness, like with all the social media and all the content that's just thrown at us, especially around safety is my focus and our focus together. So I think I have to agree with you.
Lan, how about for you?
Yes, definitely supporting what you both mentioned. I would add, all the new developments with AI and how this can support the continuous improvements of our programs and sharing the best practices. And, because sustainability is really close to my heart, we might discuss together about some metrics to be measured and making sure that we have, the same methods and standards, and so that we can continuously improve the transparency and demonstrate to consumers and other stakeholders that we have an impact, a real positive impact, and working together will just make it even better.
The transparency thing is key because then it's all around driving environmental outcomes versus the specific products that we manage. I think that's key to transparency, authenticity.
Yeah, and I think that's, just to comment on that, I think that's what all of us want to bring. I think that, the transparency is part of our credibility and the promise that we're providing as, responsible and, recycling organizations. So I totally agree. I think we need to find ways to work together to really build up the transparency and the data around what we're seeing in the marketplace and make sure that we can communicate it clearly to consumers and residents. But I want to thank you both. It's been an interesting conversation. I feel like we could talk for another 20 minutes just alone on the promotion education, much less all the operational things. So I think we're going to have to schedule another one in the future, maybe in 6 months or a year, where we can come back and we're that much further into partnership and talk about what we're seeing from the various components of the partnership and how it's working. But I want to thank you both for participating today. And that brings us to the conclusion for this episode of the Circular Exchange. Thank you, our guests, and thank you for tuning in. Together, we're building a more circular future, one conversation at a time. And to learn more, visit circularmaterials.ca or check out the links in our show notes. We'll see you next time.